everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Looks like we've got enough people logged on. Thank you for your patience. We just wanted to make sure if there was any IT issues that we had those worked out before we get started. So let me go ahead and kick us off here. First off, welcome to the SMPS TEXO Crisis Response Panel. This is a two-part series, so the first one's today and the second one is next week, and I'll give you a little bit more information about that in just a second. But I just want to thank everyone for coming, thank the panelists and our moderator who we'll introduce here in just a moment, and thank you to TEXO as well for co-partnering with us on this event. So my name is Meagan Zandy. I work for DPR Construction. I'm the current Director of the Education over SMPS, which is the Society of Marketing Professional Services. So we offer educational networking events for marketing, business development professionals, and AEC, and a lot of educational events like this one, just aimed at helping people grow in their career, develop knowledge, skills, and connections in the industry to help you become integral for your firm and to help take yourself to the next level. So if any of our members are interested, I do want to say we love the involvement and anyone volunteering or to be a part of a committee. You can reach out to us at education@smpsdallas.com, or you can visit the website and reach out there. So just a couple of cool events that we've got coming up that I'll go ahead and plug. Again, this is a two-part series. So the second one is next week, and it's same time on Wednesday, August 26th. And that's going to be led by our moderator today. So that'll be a really great series just to go through Crisis 101 and develop a plan. So anyway, that one's coming up next week. If you haven't registered, go ahead and do that. There is a new member orientation coming up for SMPS members that have joined in the last 24 months. It's August 26th as well. That one's in the morning at 9. Just a nice little happy hour and get to know everyone. And if you were curious about becoming a Cpsm, I'm not sure how many Cpsms we have on the call, but that is a designation through SMPS. It's Certified Professional Marketing Services. We are doing a 2021 study group, and there is a webinar that we're going to kick off the study group with, just if you want more information, on Tuesday, September 9th at 1, and that's a free webinar, and we'll also be raffling off a set of the study books that are worth $160 for the set. So if you're interested in that, come on out. We'd love to have you and just ask questions and give you a little more information about that. We do also have a Adobe user forum for anyone who's either beginning, just opened it, or pro. We've got a trained Adobe professional that works with Adobe directly, and she is just an incredible teacher. Her name is Julie Schaefer, and she'll be leading that on September 10th, and that is an all-day thing. We've got a beginner forum and then an advanced and proposal focused one in the afternoon. So again, if you have any more questions about any of those events, go to smpsdallas.com and you can find out more. And I'll go ahead and kick it over to Emily with TEXO.
Hi everybody, my name is Emily Baker and I'm the marketing manager for TEXO. TEXO is the largest commercial contractors association in Texas and one of the largest affiliated with the National Associated Builders and Contractors, ABC, or the Associated General Contractors of America, AGC. Representing construction member companies who do more than $15 billion worth of work annually, TEXO and its members are critical to the economic growth and improvement of our area. The association maintains a strategic focus in 3 primary service areas, including governmental representation, safety and skilled craft training, and professional development and leadership training. If you're interested in learning more about TEXO, feel free to visit our website at texoassociation.org or email us at texo@texoassociation.org. A few upcoming events for us as well. All upcoming events can be found at events.texoassociation.org, but some major ones coming up are our TEXO Foundation Clay Shoot, which is September 10th at Dallas Gun Club in Louisville. Teams are sold out, but if you're already signed up and you're interested in being in the Flurry Shootout, there's still spots available for that as well as sponsorships. Also, this event is a fundraiser for our TEXO Foundation, which works with high school students, college students, and the community in growing the workforce for the construction industry. So we are open for donations for that as well. If you're interested, please check out our website. Additionally, we are partnered with ASA for our TEXO Foundation ASA Bass Tournament on September 25th through 26th at Lake Fork Marina in East Texas. Again, teams are available for that as well as sponsorships. And then finally, we have a full slate of professional development courses coming up this fall, including a virtual project management development program, a Cpsm scheduling series, and a liens and bond claim webinar.
Awesome. So we'll go ahead and start to introduce our moderator and our panelists, and we'll get kicked off. So I've got the pleasure of introducing our moderator today, Tori Thompson-Robertson. Hi, Tori. She is a senior account executive with Buie and Company, and it's an Austin-based, I'm sorry, let me pull my screen back up here, an Austin-based PR and marketing firm. They service a variety of clients across AEC clients all across Central Texas. They handle PR, governmental affairs, and creative services for clients ranging from City of Austin and Austin Independent School District to Stream Realty and Catalyst. So Tori specializes in strategic communication campaigns for clients, including media relations, message platform development, community outreach, and events. So welcome, Tori. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. I have the pleasure of introducing one of our first panelists, Brooks Powell. Brooks Powell applies his creativity and passion as a marketer, strategist, and writer in a broad range of roles for BOKA Powell, an award-winning architecture, interiors, planning, and design firm with offices in Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, and Denver. As senior associate, Brooks leads business development and marketing activities firm-wide. He also manages the firm's in-house environmental graphics and branding division, Studio Blue Square. Welcome.
Awesome. So we'll get our next panelist, Meagan Bubella with TDI Industries, for TDI Industries. They're a Dallas-based employee-owned mechanical contractor. Meagan is the communications manager overseeing all external, internal, and internal PR and digital communications team. She's also led the revision of the company's crisis communications plan and guided the COVID-19 corporate communications for partners and customers as they needed it. So welcome, Meagan.
Next up with our panelists is Rocky Cherry. As a vice president at Cherry Coatings, Rocky's role is developing a strategic to execution plan to significantly increase the company's participation with value-add solutions, partnering with general contractors and owners. He joined Cherry Coatings in 2009, and since then the company has continued to grow and evolve into one of the largest family-owned subcontractor companies in Texas. Fun fact, before joining Cherry Coatings, Rocky played professional baseball as a pitcher with the following teams: the Chicago Cubs, Baltimore Orioles, New York Mets, Boston Red Sox, and the San Diego Padres. Welcome, Rocky.
And last but not least, we've got Keyan Zandy. Keyan is the COO for Skiles Group, a 48-year-old DFW-based specialty healthcare builder. Keyan is responsible for the oversight of the firm's daily operations and ensuring that all lean construction processes are continuously improved and consistently practiced in their firm. He's also the co-author of Lean Builder, a builder's guide to applying lean tools in the field, and also serves as a CEO for Smart Safety, which a lot of you may have heard of. It's an award-winning crisis management, communication, and emergency response tool that we're going to hear a little bit more about today.
And before we begin, I wanted to let everybody know that if you have any questions during the panel, either generally or for a specific panelist, please be sure to ask them in the chat box. Meagan and I will be monitoring the chat during the call, and we will ask any questions that did not get answered at the end with time permitting. Now I'll hand it over to you, Tori.
Awesome. Well, so great to see you guys again. I've been looking forward to this panel and speaking with you all. And to those of you for tuning in, thanks so much for joining us. So just to kind of set the stage here, for endless reasons, I think this is a really interesting time to be in communications. Now more than ever, while we're either working from home or coming into the office at different times of the day to distance, it's incredibly important that we all stay in constant and clear communication, and not only with our internal teams, but also to external stakeholders who need to stay up to date. So for you guys on this panel, and to many of those of you tuning in from different AEC organizations, that might mean communicating with a very small staff, or it could mean communicating with multiple teams across markets all over the US. So we describe this panel kind of as crisis communications, but we are nearing 7 months of COVID. So to me personally, it's starting just to feel like comms. But we're all really kind of learning as we go here and taking this day by day. So today, it's my hope that we all kind of walk away feeling validated that, you know, we're not alone. We're all kind of taking the right steps here, or perhaps you learn something new. So I'm going to kick it over to you guys, our panel of experts, and just start sort of pre-COVID. So I'm curious to hear from some of you how you kind of felt prepared coming into March, and whether or not you might have had a crisis comms in place at that time. So Keyan, I think you've got a really unique position here, given you created a tool specifically for crises. So let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. So our firm, Skiles Group, is a healthcare builder based here in Dallas. And we've been on a lean journey within our firm over the last 5 or 6 years, where we've been trying to figure out ways to make ourselves more efficient, reduce waste on our projects. And one of the first places we wanted to start was with safety, because of how important it is. And it's just so interesting in our business, talking to firms much larger than us or smaller, our response to crisis management in the field is pretty antiquated. If you ask most project superintendents, if there was a crisis on site, somebody hurt themselves, what's the common response? Most of them would say that we pull out an air horn and have a blast, and people are supposed to remember what rally point they're supposed to go to. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of chaotic, especially if you're working and doing interior projects like we do, where we're on multiple floors of a hospital. You're not blowing an air horn if something catches on fire or somebody hurts themselves. And so we really felt like we needed to push crisis management further in our firm. And a group of us got together, and we thought we were being pretty sharp, where we were going to have these crisis management cards that we were going to give out to our trade partners, and they would be able to know exactly where the rally points were, who the contacts were they needed to contact in case of an emergency, and then finally where the clinics or the nearest hospitals were if it got that severe. And when we took it to our director of marketing, and she started actually thinking through the logistics of us printing cards, she said, well, do you think these cards would need to be in Spanish? And we said, yeah, they probably would. And then she asked, and this would be across all our projects, the different states we work in. We said, yeah. And then she said, will the contacts ever change, or will the locations for the rally points ever change? And we said, yeah, they would. And she's like, how is that lean? And so we went back to the drawing board, and an idea came up for what if it was an app? And we started slowly creating what eventually became Smart Safety, where everybody can get a push notification on site in case of an emergency. They know exactly where the rally points are, and it geolocates everybody to the site. We were able to file a patent for it. But I share that story because I feel like our industry can do a lot better when it comes to crisis communication, especially in an emergency. And I'm optimistic that now that we're in this pandemic, the amount of technology and the amount of focus on crisis communication is going to continue to push us further, because we are a little bit slow to change in the construction side of the business.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think, you know, very valid is, you know, a lot of folks in our industry may not necessarily have had these crisis comms plans in place. And, you know, who could have predicted something like this would happen, but here we are. And so Rocky, as someone who, you know, might not have had these tools sort of readily available, or, you know, a background in crisis, I'd love to hear from you, you know, how did you jumpstart your plan, and what were sort of your first steps? And I believe you're on mute. Let me see if I can unmute you. Okay, you should be good.
All right, thank you. We didn't really have a crisis communication plan. I've actually never even really heard of those words before. We usually follow the lead of the general contractor. They're usually the paver, and we just kind of follow their rules and regulations. So when we had this happen to us, and we have over 1,000 people in the field, we had to figure out how to lead our people well. And the best thing that we did is we didn't know the right answers, but in order to do what was best, we had to listen to our people. We tried to ask them questions and just see, what is your anxiety level out there? I know you're dealing with something that is very commendable that you're doing, because you're risking your life every day on the job site, trying to finish work that needs to be done, and it's essential, which we're blessed to have, but yet there was still the unknown of like how serious this was. And we just listened to them. So we tried to figure out what they needed from us, what we could provide from them. We had daily leadership huddles where we would talk and say, hey, what's going on? What are you hearing? What are our people saying? And then we also were fortunate enough to be in the painting industry where we wear masks, and masks were part of our our daily operations. So early on, I know it was back and forth, masks are good, masks are not good. We just made the recommendation that we're going to provide masks to everybody. You don't have to wear it, but we have clean masks that will, protect you if you want them. I think that was a great thing that we did, and that was something that we didn't come up on our own. It was, we were listening to our people. And then the other thing is we created our own hand sanitizer. At the time, hand sanitizer was very limited. We luckily deal with coatings, and we have alcohol in our shop. So we basically made our own, ordered a bunch of bottles and made our own hand sanitizer and handed them out to job sites so people could have access quickly, carry it on their tool belts or on their jeans, and spray and keep them clean. But we probably made a ton of mistakes, but the one thing we did right was just listen to our people and try to do the best we could, because we didn't know if we were making good decisions or bad decisions at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, you'd never even really heard of crisis communications before. And I think that a lot of those that are tuning in can probably relate. And there are, 100 different types of crisis communications, but COVID specifically comes with, sort of its set of its own challenges. And so throughout all of these different types of crises, I think, employee health and safety is always the number one priority. So I think, we can all agree on that, and that the number one priority is to just get your house in order. Rocky, you touched on some processes that you guys took in place. So Meagan, do you want to speak a little bit about the importance of internal communications and setting up these types of protocols? What were some of the precautions that you are all taking at TD Industries?
So for us, as Rocky hit on it, safety was obviously the first thing that we were concerned about, and the health of our people. And so some of the processes in place were just following those that were set up by the CDC and other, valid organizations that were telling us these are the things that you need to do to protect your people and protect yourself. We relied really heavily and still are enforcing the 6-foot rule, and where those didn't apply, we made sure that PPE was manned up, and really made sure that those people felt even more supported. To what Rocky said, we also listened to our people. Very early on, we developed a crisis email hotline so that people could send in questions or concerns or ask, just what do we do? And from the information we were gathering there, we developed an FAQ sheet that we made sure was easily accessible on a website, developed protocols, and then just kind of really made sure that our crisis communications plans were supporting everything that we were giving out to our people. One thing that was really important is, in the beginning, I think we all became very saturated by information of what was and wasn't factual. And it still is, that way now. But for us, it was making sure that we were communicating really what needed to be communicated, and being very direct and transparent. And making sure we weren't putting opinion or, just muddying the waters, just being very factual about it, and consistent with that message. I think there were times we maybe could have moved a little faster, but, we're all in it, and you were just kind of learning as you go, and we still are. But I think that just for us, putting together processes that followed the rules and were consistent. We're across, 3 different states. And so there were times where you had to look at what Texas was saying versus Arizona versus Colorado. And it made it hard for us to think about what do we communicate in one geography versus another. And so we tried to keep our communications very much that everyone was getting the same message and they didn't have to think about what's my state doing. So we kind of set the baseline as a company and made sure that it followed each of those rules and regulations that were being written.
Yeah, and just a quick follow-up to that, you mentioned the word transparent, and I just wanted to quickly reiterate that, just because I think, you know, transparency is incredibly key here. So can you kind of talk a little bit about, you know, why is transparency so important? I think for a lot of people, it sounds like the easier thing to do to kind of keep things quiet. But, you know, especially with a virus that's as contagious as COVID, can you talk a little bit about transparent communication?
Yeah, so I mean, just as a platform for our company, we're very transparent. Sometimes it could be to a default, but I think it's just very important to send the message as a company and as individual people. I mean, we're employee owned, and so ownership of our people lives in the culture of our company. And you know, there are times where we had to, you know, let go of people, and we had to be very transparent about that. And we had to make decisions of, we've got people in the field that we're asking to do things that we're struggling with. Is this or is this not safe in terms of you know, what this virus is about? And then on the other end, we have people that are in an office environment that we're telling to work from home. So why are we making those suggestions? And being very clear about the fact that some of our jobs require us to be in person every day. And in order for those people to continue to support the partners who had to do that, some of us had to choose to work in remote areas so that the places were safer for them. And so just keeping that message very constant and consistent and open, and giving our people an opportunity to provide feedback and concern, and then not even just adjusting our communications, but making sure we're answering the questions that they're asking of us, because chances are if one person has that question, the many do.
Yeah, absolutely. So Brooks, I will ask you this one, but as a person who specializes in marketing and crisis communications, I'd love to hear some of the tactics that you guys have used or insights on just keeping employees up to date. What have you seen as the most successful at BOKA Powell, and how have you prevented any kind of breakdown in communication?
Sure. No, I think the transparency question is huge. That has been something that we've really focused on really for the last year, and so we've just continued that. We want all of our employees to understand the financial health of the firm, so we cover that as part of our all hands meeting once a month. We've been very, very fortunate that BOKA Powell in all of our markets has had no layoffs, no pay cuts, no furloughs, which is very unique, and so we want to be very straightforward with our folks and make sure that they know that the firm is solid and that we're moving forward as planned. But we knew from the get-go we needed to be very intentional, very focused at every level, internally, externally, within each one of our teams, making sure that we have everybody connected and engaged. We have actually had 5 new hires during the pandemic, which is very strange to be coming into a brand new company, a brand new culture. And so that was something that was part of our HR process, our onboarding process, but also wanted to make sure that they had strong connections, understood the company culture, and felt supported now that they're all working from home, coming into a brand new environment. We just wanted to make sure that they didn't feel like they were thrown to the wolves while they're coming into be part of our firm family. We also have maintained our commitment to our interns. So we have a fully fledged intern program running this year. Those folks are working from home. We do have some that choose to come into the office, and because I think all of us are technically considered essential, we're here and able to utilize our office facilities, but we wanted to make sure that they had a fulfilling experience as interns. We started back in March when everything really got going with COVID and we had to make the decision to close our offices. We created a website to help manage expectations. We created videos to show people what the office was going to be like, how we were changing things. We created a 360 panoramic tour of our office so that everyone could go space to space and understand what does it look like in the office? How are things changing? Would I feel safe going into that place? So that was a kind of use of technology that allowed us to really share literally what it's like to be in the office. But everything from the check-in procedure to arrows on the floor, removing furniture in conference rooms, all of that stuff was some messages we wanted to share. We updated our company protocols manual to include all of our new procedures, including construction administration travel. As a design firm, we don't have folks in the field all the time, but we have folks that must visit the site during various phases of construction to make sure that things are going according to plan. So that's something where, again, when we talk about construction and being on a job site, we want to make sure that they are safe and that they have the PPE that's required for them to be there. We instituted a block schedule. So when it was safe to be in the office before the positivity rate went through the roof, we had an A/B schedule for our team. So we divided up folks to make sure that we had project teams on an A schedule who worked together and a B schedule who worked together so they could have face time in the office but still be able to social distance. We also created some resources for health and wellness. Mental health is a huge part of what we're all experiencing, and we wanted to make sure that people had those resources available to them. We wanted to make sure that they were available to share with their families. We have folks that are on our insurance coverage who want to take advantage of having either telemedicine or other ways to get some mental health support. So that was something that was important to us. But the one thing that we really wanted to make sure we understood was how communications can support culture in all of this. I feel like one of the greatest things that we did and have done in our 45 years in practice is build a really strong, dynamic company culture. And the reason we've been able to survive as well as we have is really because I think that was so strong going into a work from home environment. And so the people who are joining our organization who are brand new haven't gotten to experience that yet. They've gotten to experience the things that we're doing virtually via lunch groups, via scavenger hunts, and all kinds of fun Friday activities that we do. But we want to make sure that the company culture is reinforced through every kind of communication that we put out. And so if it's a message from our partners talking about the latest kind of state of the state, or even if it's something lighthearted, we just want to make sure people understand who we are and that we carry that message consistently throughout everything we do.
Yeah, that's huge. I think the mental health piece of that is huge. The culture piece is huge. Just trying to make sure that you're still nurturing an environment that feels like we're all still together. And so one thing that you mentioned too is just being considered essential. So I think a lot of the folks that are joining in today are considered essential. And so I would argue it almost puts a spotlight on you. So, it might be tough for someone who primarily works in the office to be told, go work from home. And then you've got workers out on the job site who are, potentially more at risk out in the field. So Rocky, how have you kind of dealt with this, and do you feel confident about the systems that you all have put in place?
Well, I know this, when we first when COVID was first, social distancing, CDC was giving out regulations and everything else. I got calls from a general contractor that we were working with, and after we left the job, our guys would walk to the parking lot, which was maybe, 600 yards away, and we had to walk by apartment complexes. And the general contractor got a call from the city talking about how our men were not social distancing as they walked home. And to me, that was a perfect example of people being at their house, not able to work. We were being essential workers, and they're looking at them going, hey, these people aren't following rules. And I feel like, that was the first time that opened up my eyes, where we did have a platform to show how well we are doing in this phase. And also one thing I think that we're really blessed is our safety is something that the industry has that's top of the line, and a lot of industries don't have that priority. And since it's such a big priority, I think we were able to implement a lot of the CDC guidelines early and with effectiveness. And I think that it also prevented a lot of people from contracting the disease of COVID because of that safety protocols that we're able to literally implement instantaneously. And that's something that the construction industry was really blessed to not only be the essential side, but also have that safety side too that was able to guide us through this, with accuracy.
Yeah, absolutely. Keyan, I'm looking at you kind of nodding your head because I know as a healthcare contractor, you are certainly in a unique position, often working with those that are truly at the front lines. So what would you say has really been the most critical aspect of communicating with your team and just ensuring safety?
Sure. Well, it was interesting, that mid-March when things started getting shut down. I feel like a lot of us in our industry were late in preparation, including us. The one thing that we did do late February, early March was we really started sourcing a lot of masks for our workers, as well as negative air machines to change airflow and a lot of sanitizer. And, on our projects that are away from the hospitals that are healthcare facilities, we started implementing temperature checks and really focused on worker safety because we knew that we wanted to keep working. On our projects in the hospital, we were convinced that we were going to be shut down. Just why have the risk of doing construction in a hospital if there was this imminent threat of a bunch of COVID-related cases coming to the hospital? But what we did was we put together a plan that we sent to all our healthcare systems that basically described how we were going to start taking temperature checks, which was kind of before a lot of people were doing that. We were even nervous legally, like, should we be taking people's temperatures? But we wanted people to stay safe. And so we kind of communicated our plan proactively with these healthcare institutions, especially if there was a case, because if there's a case in the field, it's one thing. If there's a case inside a hospital for a client, that's a different thing. And so, but with that proactive approach, really sharing our plan, how we were going to get things clean, how they could be a part of it, I feel like it provided a level of comfort, and we were able to keep going on our projects, which really felt good because we wanted to be a part of the solution. I mean, if anybody, we thought in a pandemic, if anybody could help, it could be a healthcare builder. And so that's really where we were focused, and we were glad that we were at least set up to do so.
Yeah, that's awesome. Excellent. Well, we've talked a lot about internal protocols and just making sure that we're all staying healthy and safe. But what about those external stakeholders, others that need to know and stay up to date with the changes that are going on in-house? So at Buie & Company, we've helped our clients draft social media posts, write direct mailers, email blasts that go out for clients that need to share these important updates. So Meagan, I'm sure you've done similar things. So what do your clients, partners, and customers really need to know, and what sort of channels have you utilized to do so?
So for us, we very early on had started drafting templated letters that our business unit leaders could use on a case-by-case basis. We believe that the messaging, although consistent from TD, needed to come from those personal relationships that they were having with their subcontractors and contractors on the job sites. So kind of put those letters in their hands, and they were emailable, and constantly revising to make sure that we were repeating all of the changes that we were making, from safety to protocols, etc. In addition to TD being a mechanical construction, we also have a service quality side. And so what were the things that we were doing to make sure that our employees were practicing that health and safety while they were going into customer buildings? In addition to those letters, making sure that anyone who had direct email contact with customers, we were putting CTA images into the protocols web pages that we have built for customers, with that constant communication of the things that we were doing. We really didn't do too much social wise because at this point everyone in the construction industry saw us as essential, and so if our customers were open, they knew that we were open and there to support them. So a lot of the communication was verbal, and we made sure that any messaging that we were asking of our people, that we were supplying them with some sort of statement so that it was consistent message, and we weren't just relying on them to have those conversations without the support of their company.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I wonder, I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And I'd love to talk about silver linings, because I think as devastating as COVID has been, and as many ways as it has affected us, I wonder if you guys have seen any positive impacts that may have resulted because of it. And I'll give you an example. We work with a transportation and mobility solutions company. And they have actually seen, some of their projects fast tracked because there are less cars on the road, and they are, building this network of roadway infrastructure. So their projects have actually fast tracked. So Keyan, curious to hear from you if any ways your team has been able to see positive in all of this.
Yeah, sure. I think there's two scenarios I can think of. The first is that, especially on larger ground up projects, we got to really make sure we don't have too many men and women working in the same space. And so immediately on one of our larger projects that was kind of at a peak of about 180 workers or so, we began working 2 shifts. What was different, we've done this in the past, but what was different was we really split the work. So it wasn't all the workers working in separate shifts. It was like a drywall trade partner working, from 6 to 2, and then the plumbers and mechanical trades working, let's say 3 to 7, something like that. But what we noticed was that the flow of the work really started to improve because there wasn't as many men and materials in each other's way, and we actually started gaining time on the project, and the project's probably going to complete over a month early. And so that was eye-opening because we implement a lot of lean scheduling, but just to kind of see it work like that had us rethink some of the way we build our schedules. And then the other thing that I would say is that, prefabrication in our industry has really started to evolve prior to COVID. And the way we always look at prefabrication is, does it make sense being it's less expensive, that it's going to enhance the schedule, or that it's safer to do the work offsite and bring it in than to do it on site? But now, living through the pandemic and having the need to not have as many people on site, I think we're going to see an even larger push for prefabrication, just because it's just another thing that is a benefit to doing it, like having it offsite to keep people away from the site.
Yeah, that's great. And something that we'll kind of touch on in just a bit is sort of industry standard going forward. And perhaps those 2 examples that you just mentioned, the changes in schedule is something that you guys might implement long term.
Sure.
So we'll talk a bit about that in just a bit. Brooks, I'll look to you. Perhaps, as you're a crisis comms professional, maybe you've dedicated more time to building internal resources. So any sort of silver linings that you're seeing out of COVID?
Sure. We definitely have spent a great deal of time within our leadership team talking about strategic priorities. We have our annual retreat each year, so that's just given us a lot of extra time to talk with each other about things that we need to be working on internally. A lot of the work from home exercises has taught us where there are gaps in our organizational structure, where there are things that we need to be improving within our project management processes, our QA/QC. So we definitely have seen quite a bit of opportunity to look internally and help to improve some of those things. One of the silver linings I'll bring up is that early on we started communicating with our teams to make sure that they and their families had the right PPE. And so we actually utilized our 3D printers to start generating masks, or I should say face shields. And so we generated about 100 of those that we've shared with clients, with our employees and their families who work especially in healthcare industries or as first responders. So that's something we never knew we were going to get involved in, but it's something that turned out to be a really cool thing for us to help with. Even though I feel like we barely, took a tip off the iceberg with the amount of need that there has been. It's something that I feel like using that type of technology was really cool, something that was neat for us to be involved in. We also, I think, have been really deliberate about communicating with people who are reaching out to us. I manage all of our sort of inbound communication. So when it comes to folks reaching out about new job opportunities or ways to connect, network, partner. We always make sure that each person that reaches out to the firm has a personal response so that they know that we care, that we're engaging, and that we're giving everybody as much help and assistance as we can, because we know there's a lot of people in the AEC industry that are out there who are hurting, who need jobs, who need ways to provide for their families. So we want to make sure that we're at least doing our part to help share resources and knowledge to build people up. But yeah, I feel like there is so much doom and gloom about the situation that we're in, but there are so many great things that have come out of this, and the AEC industry has been at the forefront because, again, being essential, we've been in the thick of it from the beginning. So I'm just really proud of the way that our firm has responded, and so many of our partners that we've seen in the industry have just done really great work in supporting communities.
Yeah, wonderful. And Rocky, I want to give you a chance to weigh in here as well. Just any sort of positive impacts that you've seen or felt.
My commute to work is a lot better. But on a serious note, we've actually had a lot of silver linings. We've actually hired 1.3 people per week, office personnel. We've been a very reactive company, and we've finally been able to be a proactive company. There's a lot of people that talent was short, and we've been able to get that talent back. Also, community-wise, we were able to give half of our masks. We had 10,000 masks in stock, and we gave half of them to healthcare workers around hospitals throughout DFW, Austin, Fort Worth, in Houston. And the other thing is, it allowed us to be more technology forward thinking. We were already running out of office space, and we were able to create workstations where people can come and go without, I mean, obviously we'd clean it, but it allowed us to be a little bit more flexible, be a little more creative, because sometimes we can be in a box. And I feel like we just were challenged. And when you get challenged, the cream rises to the top. And that's the best thing that I've seen is that we have changed, and it gives us confidence that when you are thrown a curveball, you're able to stay back and hit it out of the park. And I think that that's what I've seen all of my trade partners do, all of our people in our, in our business. Everybody's done a really good job.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about media protocol, because I think this is a really important part of communications as well. So Meagan, for you, what types of media protocols do you guys have in place if a reporter, does reach out for a comment on a job site or construction status, or how COVID might have affected those timelines? So what are the types of things that you need to be prepared for, and what are the types of things that you need to make sure to communicate?
So for TD, and I'm sure that Brooks can share the same feeling, you have one stakeholder who's very responsible for making sure that they're communicating the appropriate message. So constantly making sure that our people out in the field have that holding statement. And the formula within that holding statement is, I can't provide the details about this topic, but here's the contact information for my business unit leader or for the leader of marketing and communications. And then, it really is a punt over to our teams to make sure that we're communicating the right message given whatever the question may be, so not to get too far into details around what some of those questions may arise from, but making sure that we just have that consistent message that we're supplying them with, because it's not their responsibility to have to deliver those communications. From a social media side, it's also, we make sure that we pull all that messaging in, and then we follow our process in how we communicate back, because we've definitely been hit on a public platform and in private message, and we just have to make sure that we're hearing, because sometimes it's not even from media. Sometimes it's from, as Rocky communicated earlier, it's from just the community. And so you need to make sure that you're addressing their question, but you're doing it in a way that you're being respectful, but just following what your company stance is as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I think, the key part of all of this is just making sure that you are as streamlined as possible and just have one source of truth, speaking from the same message and having a consistent spokesperson. And to your point, whether that's for media or for social media or even just for the community. So I think that's a great point. And
something I want to add, Tori, too, is that we're caught in this day and age where everything is very digital now, and no response is a response. And so that's just something really to keep in mind too. Even if you're not comfortable having a deep conversation with someone, you need to have a prepared message because they will keep coming at you if you don't.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. The sort of no comment is not something that we would ever recommend. So that's a great point as well. So COVID has really been a through line across every single headline the past 6 months. And I might even say that the construction industry has been truly front and center, just because, you know, especially in early months when construction continues to be sort of an essential business. So Brooks, how have you seen the media landscape change as it relates to your projects? Have you seen more interest, less interest? Is it harder to secure positive media coverage? What are you seeing?
That's a great question. We have been really fortunate to have a lot of local, national, and international media results as a result of folks really just hungry for information about where we're headed. They want to know, what is my office going to look like? What is my hotel experience going to look like? What are we going to do for the next pandemic? And so we have been very deliberate about sharing information. We have developed our own resources. We've had about 40 people involved in a coalition internally who've been working to develop resources for building technology, building systems, interior and architectural changes that we anticipate. But you know, in addition to media, we've had our clients reaching out and asking the same questions, because you know, the projects we finished in the last year, you know, folks are reaching out going, okay, we loved our space before March, and so now what are we going to do when we have to go back there? How are we going to retrofit the space? How are we going to re-inhabit our office? And so one of the things that we've tried to be very intentional about is just making sure that we provide information very authoritatively, but that we also recognize that this is all theory. I mean, no one has done any of this yet. No one has put bipolar ionization into their office, or I should say, there are some who have, but you know, is that a system that works for everybody? No. Are ultraviolet systems something that work for everybody? No. You know, are we going to be retrofitting bathrooms to eliminate cross paths in circulation? There's all kinds of things that are going to happen with building design and technology, and people are very interested in where that information or how they can get that information and share it with not just their internal stakeholders, but their families, and they want to be able to rely on something trustworthy to be able to build their own confidence. So I would say, you know, that has been the biggest media thing that we've anticipated or experienced. But the other piece that I wanted to bring up is, you know, employee use of social media. I know we're all under a lot of stress, and I know there's a lot of big topics that are happening in our world right now. A lot of certainly topics that have to do with social justice and TDI initiatives. And one of the things we've had to address very resolutely is our employees' use of social media. And some of the comments that they are making and wanting to make sure that they're representing themselves professionally, and that, you know, we have had several instances where people have reached out to us and pointed to comments that people have made that we then had to issue statements about and really respond to, just to make sure that they know that the opinions being shared are not those of the firm, even though they are representing the firm. And of course, on every social media platform, there's an opportunity for you to say who you work for, and that's all too easy for people to go and find out. So we've had to share with our folks just that reminder that we are all professionals, and that what we do outside the firm represents the firm. And even though we may be under stress, there are ways to communicate and be mature, responsible adults, and have conversations without without impugning anybody's character. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and I think that really goes back to Megan's point, as well as just as a company or an organization, just making sure that you are ready and on message, and again, really streamlined, just so that you can address those in a really thoughtful way. So we talked a little bit about project timelines earlier, and how some of those have progressed faster than usual, but I want to talk about completion and delivery of a project, because I think that's super interesting during COVID. So for example, we are working with a designer and developer that just finished a student housing project in West Campus here at UT Austin. And obviously, you know, the university is one of the most dense neighborhoods in Austin, so it comes with its own set of challenges and complexities. So I know, you know, every project does. So Rocky, in your experience, just completing and finishing these types of projects, what do those challenges look like, and how do you really overcome them?
So that's probably been something that's challenged us the most in the field. And the reason why is we are one of the last trades to leave the building. And with that, COVID caused some delays, and I was really excited to hear what Keyan had to say about the ability to increase schedule performance. And that was like wow, that's pretty powerful. And I'd love to learn more about that, because what I've seen is that we've had electrician get sick, that group quarantines, therefore the schedule is delayed, and next thing you know, you get handed at the very end a kind of piecemeal job, is what we call it in the industry, and you have to try to put it together. And it required a lot of extra manpower on our part. The biggest thing I can say is that, fortunate for us, we're able to use our resources that we have. Being one of the largest contractors in the state of Texas, we were able to pull those people to make those schedules happen. But that wasn't without a cost. And that was something that we had to go for the greater good, trust the owner, trust the general contractor that they would work with us. But it was difficult for the last probably 2 months on schedules, because there has been delays of what we have seen on the projects we've been.
Yeah, absolutely. It's certainly tough. And, you know, even on the example I mentioned is they have to think about the kids actually getting moved into those living facilities in time before school. So sometimes those project deadlines are a little bit more rigid, and that can certainly be tough, especially for your industry where, you know, you mentioned you are the last to leave a project.
Yes,
so,
and
I
didn't really have anything else to say. Sorry.
No, all good. I think, you know, we're nearing 2 o'clock, and I want to leave a little bit of time for the Q&A, but I want to officially wrap up with you guys and have each of you share sort of your highlights or biggest lessons learned from COVID. So Meagan, I'll start with you. If you want to give us your biggest sort of takeaway from the past 6 months.
So I think we have two things. One is we talked about processes earlier, and just the use of tools that we already have in our tool belt. Being able to move quickly to think about what can that tool do for me during this state. So an example would be we took advantage of our safety app and how we were tracking the temperature checking and the daily assessments and the questions that were coming through. You know, that app wasn't originally set up for that, and we kind of transformed it to support the need that was happening right now. And so I think that that's one thing that, although we hopefully won't have to take temperatures forever, that we'll probably use it more for a tool outside of what it was originally built for. The other, I think, is really the ability to take advantage of technology in terms of how we recruit people and how we train and develop them. So, you know, we have platforms set in place, but, you know, we're recruiting people that may not necessarily be located in our geographies anymore, because we may see remote work last a lot longer. And so what does that look like for the landscape and how we hire moving forward? I think our recruiting team has done a fantastic job in in how we took on interns this year and had to do that digital approach and what that looked like. And then what does that look like for new hires moving forward? And then the same goes for development and training. I'm really proud to see the fact that we have a really strong leader in that team that manages our learning and development. And they didn't just take training and push it online and make it the same. They had to rework and engage our people differently. And so although the instruction is still there, they had to reformat what that looked like moving forward because our training has had to go virtual. And, you know, in light of all of this, just because we're forced to do something, you know, that we're not used to for a 6-month, 8-month, 12-month time period, we have to make sure that we're still developing and growing our people. And so I think that's just something that our company's been really kind of held as something that we need to make sure we're pushing forward on. And I think it's something to be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the virtual aspect of this is incredibly key. I think, you know, I hate to say it's fortunate, but it is great that it's, you know, coming at a time when technology has been so beneficial. You know, it's hard to think about what this would even look like 5-10 years ago. I think we're in a much better spot technologically. And so that all of those sort of sources and channels have been incredibly helpful. So Brooks, I'll kick it over to you. What is one thing you wish you knew in the beginning of March that you know now?
Oh gosh. Well, that's a different question than I thought you were going to ask, but I do want to. I think one of the things that has been really great about our organization is just our commitment to our culture and wanting to make sure that that is reiterated in every way possible. That we have learned we have to work so much harder at making those meaningful connections, keeping people engaged, checking in on people, making sure that they're not drifting. That they're engaged in their projects, that they're communicating with their teams. I think the mental health piece has been really challenging for a lot of folks. And so that's something that I feel like we've done a really good job at, is just making sure that we're checking in and we're expressing our genuine desire to help folks and make sure that they're not kind of out there just floating and wondering, you know, how all of this is going to impact them long term. So that is very important, and I would say it's not just an internal thing. I would say it's an external thing as well. That we want our clients to know that we are doing everything we can to continue business as usual, even though it's about as unusual as it could be. But you know, again, we have the benefit of all of our folks really being able to work from home. So again, I would say that's just making sure that we're taking care of our folks.
Yeah, great. And Rocky, what is one thing that you're most proud of coming away from this experience?
Our number one core value is servant heart or servant leadership. And that was something that we really got to practice in this time. My brother and I both learned a lot on how to listen to our people, how to serve our people, and what to do. Like typically as a leader, we're self-serving and we are typically dictating down. And this is the first time that we were able to really, true colors came out in a situation that was very difficult. And typically you run towards what you're used to. And I feel like we finally really represented and showed what our core value of servant heart really was. And to me, that was the best part. And I hope our people saw that, because we want to represent them well too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, this has really forced us all to make a lot of changes, and it's great to hear from, you know, people like you that are really finding the positive out of those changes. So that's wonderful. Keyan, I will end with you. So we talked about this a little bit earlier, but you know, how do you think that coming out of this pandemic will really shape our industry going forward?
Sure. You know, I felt for a long time that our industry is just a bit behind, meaning on the construction side. We've been very slow to change. We've carried an approach where if it's not fixed, if it's not broke, you know, why fix it? And at our firm, I've always felt like we're trying to be more progressive because we see the benefit in it. What's been interesting through the pandemic is I realized that how much room there really was. And, you know, if you would have asked me in regards to technology, where our firm was at in February, I'd say, oh, we're in the top 80 to 90% capacity of the tools that we're using. And not even 6 weeks later, I tell you, wow, we've had Microsoft Teams for 5 years and like, we're not using it the way we thought we could. And so what's got me excited is I've seen for the first time this shift in mentality. We've had to adapt quicker than we've ever had to in our industry. And I think there's a lot of benefit through that. And for the more progressive builders, just thinking about, how the job site trailer is set up, how can we have, live stream our daily huddles in the morning so that more people can attend? How do we approach traveling projects? We're using a lot of technology for virtual inspection. The state who approves all our healthcare projects, as of a couple years ago, would only accept a fax to schedule an inspection, and now they're allowing their inspectors to do them on FaceTime. And so this progression is really good. We just got to capitalize on the technology that's there and not forget about it when the pandemic begins to subside.
Yeah, great point. Couldn't agree more. Well, I want to say thank you guys to our panelists for, you guys have been wonderful. And I hope that our listeners have learned a few things. And so I want to actually kick it over to them now. I know there are a couple of questions from them floating. So Meagan, I believe she's going to take some of those questions and ask you guys.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and get started. Yeah, Tori, excellent job, and really great information, everybody. There's a couple more really good questions that I feel like we could have answered here. So for companies without a focused communications team, how do you prioritize messages so there wasn't an overload of information coming out, either regarding site safety, mental health initiatives, local ordinance, updates with the CDC? How did you manage that to make sure that the right information was getting out?
Rocky, I might punt this one to you, since you had mentioned specifically not having a comms team in place.
Excellent. I wanted to. I didn't know how we were going to answer these, but thank you for kicking it to me. So we're large in our industry, but yet we are a still painting contractor that's typically behind everybody else in a lot of different avenues. And we typically don't have some of the resources that larger firms and more corporate type places might have. With that being said, it was something that we felt like we were drinking from a fire hose. We just tackled it as we could. We didn't try to overdo anything. We didn't try to be Superman. We just had to slow down, be patient. And I know that's so weird when you're trying to make quick decisions and whatnot, but take it in and do what you can. We're only a small subcontractor who has limited resources. And with that, we did the best we could. And with that, I think we did a good job in just listening to our people, as I said earlier, and utilizing the people above us, like the general contractors and the CDC had a lot of information. Filter through that the best you can and come up with a message. We met as a senior leadership team, and we kind of tackled those tasks together, delegated, empower people to make decisions for you because you can't do it all on your own.
Yeah, I think that's a point really well taken, and one that I think all of us can forget to do is just stopping to slow down and not rush to get out a message because you feel that you're obligated to do so quickly. It's incredibly important that you be very thoughtful about it. So great answer, Rocky. Keyan, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just, if your firm is a smaller firm and doesn't have a communication person per se, I recommend building a task force within a couple people of the firm. For COVID specifically, our CEO, our HR manager, our safety director, project manager, superintendent meet every week. And because this thing's evolving and it's evolved every week since. And especially, for us, if somebody gets sick, like Rocky was mentioning, if a trade partner gets sick on a job site, how we communicate that to all the other trade partners, how quickly we get those folks tested, those kind of things. And so if you don't have a communications person, build a group of people within your company, have them meet weekly, have them kind of, like Rocky's saying, solve those issues as a team. And I think that's a lot better approach than either being reactive or by letting just one person try to manage the week to week of everything that's going on.
Excellent point. Thank you for the advice. Meagan, back over to you for the second question.
So this one is about positive cases and how you handled that. When there is a positive case within your company, did you communicate to the rest of the employees or just the department that the case is internally? And how did you guys handle giving that out without giving out someone's information, or did you?
Meagan, I think you may have touched on a positive case earlier.
Yeah, so I think there are multiple layers here. There's no one quick answer. You know, by law, you have to keep that person's name private. If they choose to share that they've tested positive, that's their decision. But for us, we were making sure we were having verbal conversations with anyone who may have come in contact with that individual, whether that be an employee of TDI Industries or someone that we were working on the project with. As I shared earlier, we had letters written, but our number one was to pick up the phone and call the subcontractor, the GC, to say, hey, we've had a positive case, and here's, you know, where they were working or who they were working with. But again, keeping that individual's name, you know, to ourselves. And then in addition to that, we had weekly messages from our CEO, whether it was through a written blog or through video, and we were constantly being updated as a company. And this goes back to that transparency of, we have X number of positive cases, X number of people quarantining due to being exposed. And so I think that kind of, it just allowed us to understand too that at some point we're all going to probably come into contact with this, you know, virus, and I don't want to say we will or won't be okay. It's you know, will happen, whatever happens to that individual, but we're all here and we're communicating to you that these are things that are happening. We're not trying to hide it from you. But our number one thing was pick up the phone and have a conversation. Do as little in writing as possible, but make sure you're communicating fast to anyone who may have been exposed to that positive case.
Yeah,
and we are getting, oh, I'm so sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you're good. I was just going to say that's a great question too. I think, you know, to Meagan's point, you know, likely someone will test positive at some point. And so just being able to communicate quickly while also securing that person's privacy is really key there. So Meagan, back to you.
I have something on that. So one thing that we struggled with was somebody thinking they have symptoms, but the positive test doesn't come back for a long time. So for example, somebody has a fever, and at times the fever would be there for one day and then gone. But we would remove them from the job. We're waiting on our test results, and sometimes the test results would take 5 days or longer. We've even had some of them be lost in the mail. Those were some of the most difficult times that we had, where we communicated, but we weren't 100% sure if they were positive or not positive. They did have a fever, but it was like less than 24 hours. We're not sure if they're positive or not. Do we send our crew? What do you want us to do? And those were some of the confusing times. And Meagan, I don't know if you have any advice for me, because I struggled with that, knowing what do we do?
So for us, we had a consistent response to that. And we had some cases where people would have a fever and then no other symptoms, or they'd have other symptoms, but no fever. And so we kind of had this period where we asked them to quarantine, but it may not have been for the 14 days. So I think I'd have to go back and look at our plan, and I'm actually happy to share it with you, Rocky, if you'd like it. But, we kind of put in place of a 72-hour rule of, if you've had fever, you must quarantine for 72 hours from the time you last had fever, right? So just kind of, and that gets a little muddy, right? But at least it was consistent in that everybody was following the same rule. And those weren't things that we just kind of made up. We were following, what was recommendation by CDC or other health organizations. And so that's where we had to kind of just put a stake in the ground and say, this is what our policy is. And then once you've cleared that time frame, then we'll discuss how to get you back on the job.
I would love to add to that. In addition to our temperature checks at all of our office locations, we also have a QR code-based form that everybody that enters our office fills out. I know that's probably industry standard at this point, but when it comes to symptoms, if you answer yes to any of the symptoms that were released by the state of Texas, that will kick you out of the system, and we just don't allow you to enter our workplace. And so, it's better safe than sorry. But at the end of the day, anybody that's opting in or saying positively, yes, I have had these symptoms, it's better for them. And it's better for everybody if they just keep themselves at home. And I realize that may have impact for income and those kinds of things, but it's just one of those things we can't take a chance with.
And I want to add too, Rocky, communications marketing, we didn't do this alone. We tapped very heavily into our HR team because they know more of the rules we have to follow and, everything that has to kind of lie in its appropriate place. And so a lot of the stuff that were built was really just us trying to decide how to clearly communicate that information and following what recommendations were from those other organizations.
Awesome. So we're coming down to the last 15 minutes here. We've got a lot of great questions rolling in, but I just want to go ahead and prioritize. So if you didn't get your question answered, feel free to reach out to me. And if we want to punt that to the panel after and maybe get them to follow up with it, we can. One great question was about bringing people back to the office. I know a lot of you talked about retrofitting your offices and, obviously getting ready for bringing people back. Have you kept people in the office since then? How did you implement and roll out that plan? And then how are you dealing with employees who are teaching their children now, essentially at home as well with virtual education going on?
Brooks, I think you've touched on this before and have a lot of great insights in terms of using technology and onboarding. So I might kick it over to you.
Sure. So early on, we adopted an AV system for all of our offices. So we identified the individual workstations that could be socially distanced, where we had folks at least minimum 6 feet apart. We also worked to identify the teams that needed to come in on those days. So we moved workstations so that they were 6 feet apart, but also had the right folks coming to work on the right days. We also identified circulation patterns within our office. So we wanted to make sure there was one-way circulation in each corridor. So unfortunately, some people have to do figure eights to go to the bathroom, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. But that's one of the things that we felt like was really important, was for people to understand and for it to be very clearly communicated and marked throughout our office. These are the things that we're doing to make everybody feel safe. On a case-by-case basis, the folks who are needing to be at home because they've got kiddos that need to have online learning, we're working through that. We know that this is a really tough time for many, many folks. And so it's all being handled on an individual basis. We would like for people to be here as much as possible. Obviously, there's nobody in the office right now, with very few exceptions. A couple of our owners are here in Dallas, and we've got folks in our Austin, Fort Worth, and Denver offices. But just it really is a personal choice at this moment. We're waiting for the statewide positivity rate to drop below a certain percentage that we've established internally that will help us to chart a course for some additional action, going back to an AV schedule or going back to 50%, 75% occupancy. So again, those are policies that we've determined internally, but it really just depends on how your workplace, how your culture, your leadership team really feels comfortable dealing with those things. And at the end of the day, it really will come down to an individual choice for some people who have extenuating circumstances that they and I should say especially those who have autoimmune disorders or other things that will preclude them from participating in an office environment for the foreseeable future until we have a vaccine and other things that will keep us all safe.
Great. All right,
So
wonderful. Oh, sorry,
Great, Tori.
Meagan.
Let's go ahead and introduce our last question here. Before I launch that last question out, I do just wanted 2 quick reminders for everybody to tune into the second part of the series next week, next Wednesday, if you haven't already signed up for that. And then there will be a survey going out. If you guys wouldn't mind just responding to that, giving us some feedback about what we can do better. If you like this content, what we can help, what information we can bring to our memberships basically during this time and going forward. So just wanted to throw those 2 things out there before I ask the last question. And this is a great question to wrap on. It's safe to say a lot of us are experiencing COVID fatigue right now and complacency with following all the guidelines and everything just seeming to draw out. So what are you doing to battle employee complacency and making sure that people are still, this is very serious and keeping that seriousness with everything that they're doing?
Keyan, I might have you wrap us up here.
Yeah, sure. You know, it's interesting for us because our firm, we're split, right? So our field staff, it's kind of been business as usual. You know, they're responsible for so much anyway. And then to add this on top of their plate to where no one can come on the project without getting temperature checks, managing paperwork. If somebody were to get sick, having cleaning companies come multiple times throughout the week. So for those folks, we're trying to really support them to make sure that they know what a contribution they have for the rest of us. Because if they decided to stay home and work from home, then none of us would work. And so really supporting them, making sure that they feel valued and feel safe has been a priority. And then on the flip side, really checking in with our staff that is working from home. I have definitely noticed, I think in the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of people that it was kind of nice for them to be at home. And then as this thing's waned on, I can just tell there's a lot of stress, and especially with school starting, not starting. And so we're doing a lot of, I do, like for my personal staff, we do a lot of one-to-one check-ins every week. That's something we talk about, is how they're mental health wise, what's going on. And then as you know, whenever it comes where we start transitioning folks back, like we're not going to bring people back if they don't feel safe. I think there's enough technology out there. There's enough new innovative ways to do business that for our office folks, like we're going to make sure that we can keep them as productive and as safe as they feel. And then when they do come back, have the right protocols in place to where they're safe in the office.
Excellent. Well, I think we are just about at time. Meagan, I don't know if you have any other questions, but I believe we are wrapping there.
Yep, so that's all our questions for today. I want to thank you guys again for being so vulnerable and open and willing to share all this information with us so that we can all move forward as an industry together. I think that's really important with everything going on right now. So thank you again to each of you. Thank you, Tori, for leading. You did a fantastic job. So guys, again, reach out to us on our survey. Yeah, thank you. Big applause for each of you. And let us know how we did and if there's anything we can do better for next time. But again, thank you all so much for your time.
And a huge thanks to SMPS and TEXO as well. So hopefully we'll see a lot of you back for the workshop next week. Buie and Company, my firm will be leading, and we'll sort of walk through sort of the step-by-step process of how to create your crisis communications plan. So hopefully that's beneficial to some of you. And again, huge thank you to all of our panelists. You guys are rock stars.
Thanks, Tori. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your day.